Do you feel like you've hit a natural plateau or a ceiling that you can't seem to bust through? Well, if so, watch this video because I'm going to convince you that you probably haven't. Imagine I started calling out a series of numbers with 1 second in between each number, and your job was to try and remember and recall all those numbers that I've called out. How many do you think you'd be able to remember? So for example, try and remember this sequence of numbers. 1, 5, 8, 2, 6, 5, 5, 3, 2, 9. Can you recall all of those numbers that I just counted? Well, the reason I'm talking about this is because in one of my favorite books, Peak, the author Anders Ericsson did this particular study. What he was trying to do is to see if he could train somebody up to remember a series of digits. The guy he was trying to train up is actually called Steve Falloon, and here's how he got on. So within the first few sessions, he actually made relatively quick progress, and very fast he got up to 8 or 9 digits. But then he seemed to hit somewhat of a ceiling. In fact, he was quoted as saying this: "There appears to be a limit for me, somewhere around 8 or 9 digits. With 9 digits especially, it's very difficult to get, regardless of what pattern I use. You know, my own kind of strategies. It really doesn't matter what I use, it seems very difficult to get." Basically, he was saying that while he could remember 9 digits reliably, he just couldn't seem to get past it. He had to believe that he'd hit a natural limit. This went on for a while. They kept doing training sessions, but they still couldn't hit this 9-digit plateau. But then all of a sudden, there was a breakthrough. One day, Steve managed to get 10 digits, and then on that same day, he went up to 11 digits. So now, instead of just being able to remember 9 digits, he could remember 11. This, of course, was a major accomplishment because he'd been stuck at this plateau for so long. So what do you think happened next? Do you think he managed to break 11 digits, or do you think that was his natural ceiling? In fact, let me ask you, how many digits do you think he managed to get up to in these training sessions? Well, let me break it to you. After 60 sessions, Steve managed to remember 20 digits on the trot. But it doesn't stop there. After 100 sessions, Steve actually got up to 40 digits, which is actually more than any professional mnemonist at the time. Now here's something incredible. After 200 sessions, Steve managed to get up to 82 numbers on the trot. Now in case you're not aware just how amazing this is, here's what 82 numbers looks like. Imagine I call that out to you and you have to remember and recall them back to me. That's pretty amazing, right? So why am I talking about this story? Well, Steve at 9 digits was absolutely convinced that he couldn't break through this plateau. He was convinced that he'd met his natural limit, right? But yet within a few years, he'd managed to push that up to 82 digits, more than 9 times the amount previously. It just goes to show how wrong his limiting belief was when he was stuck at 9 digits. This same kind of thing has happened to me in my life. I can think of many examples of where I thought I had reached an absolute limit and I couldn't break through. For instance, at the gym, I had this goal of reaching a 100-kilogram bench press when I was younger, and I was stuck at like 95 for about 2 years. I was absolutely convinced. Anybody who asked me, I would have said, listen, I've hit my limit, I can't get to 100 kilograms, I've got thin arms, whatever, that's it, that's all I can lift. Yet within a year or so after that, I switched up my training, I changed my nutrition, and I actually managed to get up to 120 kilograms, something I thought just completely impossible at the time. Another example of this is my typing. I've actually got a video on this channel about this, of how I tried to increase my typing speed from 117. At the time, I thought I was already a pretty quick typer, and I didn't think my fingers could move any faster. I had all these weird beliefs that that was the max I could reach. Yet within 2 months, I got up to something like 131 words per minute. Even in business, when I think about the early days of my business, I remember we reached some kind of revenue goal. I can't remember what it is exactly. I just remember thinking, there's just no way we can scale this company up beyond this revenue goal. We've plateaued, that's it, right? Yet 4 or 5 years later, that looks ridiculous to me. Our company is probably about 10 times as big as it was back then. In all of these cases that I've just spoken about, you know, in Steve's case and with my stories as well, we had these limiting beliefs and they were just completely inaccurate. We had these beliefs that we had hit this ceiling, like genetic ceiling or ceiling that we couldn't break through. And it turned out to be not even just slightly wrong, but just completely wrong. And the reason I'm making this video is because us as humans, we have a tendency to do this. We have a tendency to jump to this conclusion that, oh, we just hit some kind of natural limit, or there's this plateau that we just can't seem to break through. That's it. We can't make any more progress. But often it's just very wrong. So why do we jump to these assumptions? Well, I think there's probably two main reasons for this. Firstly, is that progress is rarely linear. It's rarely the case that your business grows in a linear fashion one day to the next, or your strength when you go down the gym grows from one training session to the next. Often, in reality, what happens is you make some quick progress and then you're kind of plateauing for a while, and then at some point, some random point or seemingly random point, you make another bunch of progress and then you kind of reach a new plateau, and then you have to grind out to get to the next new high. So the problem with this is that often we're grinding hard on something at the same level and just not making any progress for a long period of time, and that can be disheartening, and that can lead us to form these beliefs. The second reason is that I think we expect results to come a lot faster than they actually do. Ahead of time, I think we gloss over the intricacies and the details and the hard work and the grinding that's required to make a special result happen. So the reason I'm making this video is because I want you to be aware of the fact that we all have this tendency to think like this. And I also want to tell you why it's just terribly bad for us to jump to these conclusions. It's really bad for us to think that we've met a limit or we've got a plateau that we can't bust through. The reason it's bad is because if we really believe that we can't make progress, we really believe that we've hit this glass ceiling, we can't bust through it, then that's going to affect the amount of effort that we do when we try and make progress. We're just going to put in less effort because we believe it's a fruitless endeavor. And then of course that's going to lead to poor results. And then at the end of it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We can be like, well, I told you so. I told you that was a glass ceiling. That was my natural limit. So it's one of those really harmful beliefs that can lead to a downward spiral, such that it becomes true, such that it does become your limit because you don't try and look for ways to break through it. So here's my message to you about this. I want you to be aware that we have a tendency to jump to these conclusions. It's the cop-out, right? It's very easy for us to say, oh, we just reached a natural limit, there's nothing I can do about it. It takes the responsibility away from ourselves. And to be aware of this, such that if you do start thinking like this, you catch it. And when you catch it, you realize that I'm thinking this is a limiting belief, I have, but probably this isn't true. In fact, in all likelihood, the chances that I've hit a ceiling that I can't break through are just negligible. It's the least likely valid reason why you can't break through that plateau. And instead of focusing on this false limiting belief, start looking at introducing new variables into the equation. Maybe you can change up your practice. What deliberate practice are you doing to get to the new level? Maybe you can look for new strategies in your business. Or maybe it's just a case of continuing the grind. Sometimes things just take time to come to fruition. So the takeaway is, be aware that your brain is just really bad at knowing what you're capable of and what your ability is, and that sometimes it will jump to false conclusions about hitting a plateau that you can't break through. In the same way that when Steve thought he'd hit a natural limit at 9 words, your belief that you've hit a natural limit is likely also a load of rubbish. I hope you liked this video. If you did, like my video, subscribe to the channel, and I'd like to hear from you. Tell me, do you have this limiting belief? And if so, with what? And what are you going to do about it? I answer every comment, so leave me a comment below, and I'll see you next time.